Today we are working on Psalm 132. Now, Psalm 132 traditionally is used to acquire worldly goods, to be diligent with one's duties, and or to overcome feelings of rejection and disappointment. Today, we are going to be using Psalm 132 to extract good from any past adversity. So we're going to extract good from any past adversity. So anything in your past that you look back on with regret or upset, today, instead of thinking about our past with regret or upset, we're going to actually profit off of it. We're going to bring good where there was adversity in our past. The way we work psalm spells is very simple and extremely powerful. We take the psalm in question and we recite it out loud all the way through once without stopping. This is known in the tradition as an incantation. The second step in that formula is that we go back through that psalm and we take it verse by verse and we consider the hidden occult meanings that we find within each verse. We see those as seeds of magic. And it's through this pondering and searching and digging that we are toiling in the fields of our deep mind and planting those seeds deeply in the fertile ground of our minds. And in a very real way, those seeds take root and they grow and they blossom forth and then they bear fruit after their kind. And that is what we are going to do together, you and I, today with Psalm number 132. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed. I will not give sleep to mine eyes, or slumber to mine eyelids, until I find out a place for the Lord, and habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. Lo, we heard of it at Ephratah. We found it in the fields of wood. We will go into his tabernacles. We will worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, into thy rest, thou and the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness, and let thy saints shout for joy. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of thine anointed. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. He hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I will also clothe her priests with salvation. And her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There I will make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself shall his crown flourish. All right, so this is quite a nice, lovely psalm. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions. Okay, so this is important for us here. Remember that you are David. And David means love in the Psalms. David means divine love. That is the love between you and your Creator. So you are beloved of God. That is who David is. Now, the character David in the Bible was also shown as very human. So the stories, the myths of David show his humanity, show his all of his problems. Now, a lot of the problems and afflictions that he had were not of his own doing, but many of them were. David had a lot of personality problems, a lot of character defects, a lot of flaws, but at the same time was a very, very powerful and compassionate, ultimately, king. Now, remember that David started out not as a king, but as a bard. So the bardic tradition of the Druids is very similar to the bardic tradition that is described as David. So that is why a lot of times they say that David wrote the Psalms. Well, David is a mythical creature, okay? Maybe David really existed, but the David in the Bible and the David in the Psalms is a mythology. Okay, so it's a symbol that represents you. You're beloved of the Creator. You're the beloved of the Lord. Now, the Lord of the Psalms, we must always orient ourselves. Now, in this particular psalm, it's the tetragrammaton that is being named, if you look in the Hebrew. But it doesn't matter, because for us, the Lord of these psalms represents the life principle itself, the oneness that is all, the one, the all. There is only one force, source, power, substance in all the universe. There's only one. And since there's only one, there's nothing to oppose it. There's nothing to thwart it. There's nothing that can come up against it. So one with God in this sense is a majority. If God be for you, who can be against you? And since God is all-powerful, God can, if we allow this force to do so, change all of our past and turn it into plenty or turn it into blessings. And that's exactly what we're asking for here and what we're accomplishing here with this psalm. So, Lord, remember David and all his afflictions. So, Lord, remember David in you and all of your afflictions, everything that you've gone through, all your trials, all your tribulations, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Well, that's what you've done. You've sworn, you've made a pact, you've made a covenant with God. Otherwise, you wouldn't be alive. So you've agreed. You've agreed to be here. Now, a lot of times what happens is we forget who we are. We forget our Davidness. We forget that we're beloved of God. And we start acting more in line with our more egoic self, if you will. And so that's when we get into all of these afflictions, is when we are operating and interacting with the world as an ego rather than as the beloved of God that we are. But the fact that we're alive and that we're here represents the covenant that we have made with our Creator. And that covenant, bottom line, is the law of cause and effect. That means that you are an effect of God's love. That's who you are. Now, everything that does not seem like God's love is a product of your own vain imaginings or the vain imaginings of the collective of who we are here as humans. But those problems are not God's will. Those problems are our own doing, either as a collective or as individuals. How he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Now, the God of Jacob, here we have two characters. We have three. Because if you think about this psalm as being written by Solomon, who was King David's son, so we have that's sort of an unspoken idea of what this psalm is supposed to be. This is the blessing of Solomon's temple, many people say. So let's just go with that and say that that's what it is. Solomon represents you also. But you as a product of love, as a child of love. And a child of love is a child that is wisdom. So you can think of Solomon as wisdom. That is your ability to have wisdom. Whereas David's represents your ability to love and be loved on a divine level, infinite divine love. And Jacob is the mind, represents the divine mind, in the mental part of your experience with God. Now, Jacob also is depicted in the Psalms as being very flawed. So the bottom line of this so far is that it doesn't matter what kinds of mistakes you've made. It doesn't matter your so-called sins. It doesn't matter how poorly you've done in life. All of that, and no matter what it was in your past, you can redeem gold for that. You can redeem good out of that. And that's exactly what we're doing. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed. I will not give sleep to mine eyes or slumber to mine eyelids until I find out a place for the Lord and habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. So they're talking about the Ark of the Covenant here. So in this story, they're looking for a place to put this wood container that contains the covenant between God and humanity, somewhere in the tabernacle, because that is considered to be the Holy of Holies. Now, what that represents is not a box of wood and it's not a piece of paper. It represents where you are already joined with the infinite. That is, that Holy of Holies, that ark, that covenant is the most exalted part of your mind. That is who you truly are as a soul, without any understanding of past or future or any of that. It's just who you are as a pure soul, as an extension of God's love for you. As you are created by love, as love. And the Ark of the Covenant is that holiness of that spark of who you are. That real spark of truth about who you are, devoid of all personality, devoid of all incarnation, of lessons, of problems, of mistakes, of triumphs, of fears, of any of that stuff. This is pure spirit. This is pure you. This is the reality of you. So I'm not going to rest my body until I find a place for this in my tabernacle. So the tabernacle here represents your mind. So you need to allow yourself to recognize who you are as a divine spark has nothing to do with you. It's all God. God's responsible for that divine spark. Your responsibility is to find home for that spark in your mind. And that's your priority. That's what's talked about here. I'm not going to go to sleep. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to do my taxes. I'm not going to do anything until I get this divine spark of who I am, until I get it in its home, in its resting place. That's the habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. I want God to live in me. Lo, we have heard of it at Ephrata. That's an ancient name for Bethlehem. We found it in the fields of the wood. So they heard about this ark, and they found it hidden in the woods, hidden in the forest, hidden away. We will go into his tabernacles and worship at his footstool. So the footstool of God, if you think about the feet represent understanding. They represent spiritual understanding, the understanding of who you are, what this ark means, who you are, why you're here, understanding. That's what worship means to work for. So you're working, dedicating your life to understanding your relationship with the infinite, understanding who you are as a soul. Arise, O Lord, into thy rest. Rise up into your rest. In other words, God, come alive in me and rest in me, dwell in me. I only want your presence in me. I don't want anything else. That's all I want. Because if all I have is God's presence, then nothing but God exists for me. And God equals what? Good. God is everything that's good. Everything that's good. So all my past problems are turned to good because all that I'm experiencing is the presence of that good. Arise, O Lord, into thy rest, thou and the ark of thy strength. So the ark of the strength is the connection that I'm having to that infinite intelligence, that infinite presence. That's what that ark is. It's my connection. It's not a piece of wood, but that piece of wood or that box of wood represents where I'm housing that in my own mind. And the ark of thy strength, God's strength is what we lean on because it's infinite. Our own strength is something we've concocted. It doesn't have any real substance. Anytime we try to bolster things on our own, bolster our own strength, come up with our own strength, we want to lean on the strength that already is there. And that strength is the strength of the infinite. Remember, God can't be thwarted because there is only one. So that power can't be opposed. So that ark inside of us represents our own strength. We cannot be defeated. We cannot fail because we have the infinite within us. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness, and let thy saints shout for joy. Well, the priests and the saints are thought forms within you. The priests and the saints are those which work in the temple. So those are the thoughts which keep your mind clear, which keep your mind focused, which keep your mind on remembering the ark, remembering that connection to the divine. And the saints are those which love and obey, if you will. That's what the Old Testament, love and obey. Obey just simply means be taught by. So the saints are those parts of your mind which are constantly turning to God and saying, what should I do? Where should I go? What about this problem? What about that problem? What do I do with this? What do I do with that? That's the saint. The saint is obeying, if you will, meaning being taught by infinite intelligence. And through the love of that infinite intelligence, that is David, again, that the infinite love, the saints are the thought forms in your mind which love and receive instruction, no matter what. They don't come up with their own ideas. They don't come up with their own plans. They don't come up with their own vain imaginings. That's what the heathen do in your mind. In this particular case, the saints are talking about the thought forms of your mind that are focused on their love for the infinite. And that love for the infinite constantly is showing them where to go, what to do, and how to be successful, happy, joyous, and free in each and every situation. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of thine anointed. So the servant of David is you being the servant of love. I'm going to serve nothing but love. I'm only going to serve love. I'm not going to serve anything else. Love is my one and only master. And so that's divine love, perfect love. That's what that's talking about. So for the sake of the fact that I'm only serving love, don't turn your face away from me. Well, like God's going to turn God's face away from love. God is love. It's a poetic thing. It's a poetic gesture that is declaring that if I am serving love, then God's face is always turned towards me because I'm not turning away. God's face never gets turned away because God is always there. God is the only presence, the only power, the only source, the only substance. There's only one, right? It's constantly there. But the idea that God's face would be turned away is simply a poetic way of saying, I'm not going to turn my face away from love. I'm going to keep focused on love. And my love is my master. Love is my master. Love itself, not a deity, not some spirit, not some ego, not some person, but love itself. The principle of love itself is my master. So you're anointed. You are anointed. And anointing is pouring oil on, to set apart, to bless. So when God pours oil on you and anoints you, what that does is it doesn't make you holy. It reminds you of your holiness. Because you can't be made holy because you were created holy. The anointing simply separates you from those parts of yourself that you've come up with on your own, that are not a part of God, that are not a part of who you are, that are not a part of the plan, the design, the divine design, that are not a part of perfect love, that are not a part of any of the qualities of God. Those things are vain imagining. So when you're anointed, all that means is that you are becoming aware of the truth and you're forgetting the lies, you're forgetting the false. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. So God's already told you this. God told you this at your creation. I'm not turning away from you. I'm here for you for eternity. You are my beloved. You are my great beloved child. I am so pleased with you. I love you, and I'm always here for you. So that's God's promise. Now, all we have to do is keep our face pointed toward that, and then all is well. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. So the fruit of your body is going to be set upon a throne. In other words, your body, the fruit of your body is a symbol. It doesn't mean your physical offspring. That's not what this is talking about. The body here represents the body of light, the body of your mind. And the offspring of your body of light are all of your holy thoughts, all of the love that you give, all of the good that you bring. All of the good that you bring, because you're an extension of love, you're an extension of light, you're an extension of goodness, and out of you extends light, love, and goodness as well. So all of that is going to be enthroned because you are part of a royal family. You are part of the royal house of the infinite. That's who you are. So anything that doesn't look like that holiness is being rejected, doesn't even exist. It's not even being acknowledged. And that's how we can allow all of your adversity to be turned to good, because the truth is being put upon a throne, and the rest of it just doesn't even exist anymore. If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. So this is God talking to you, saying, as long as you and your thoughts are stayed on God, you have nothing to worry about. The problems only come in when you don't focus on God, when you don't focus on that which is right, which is good. That is, keep my covenant and my testimony. Covenant and testimony here is that cause and effect is the only power. And so if there's effects in your life that you don't like, it's because you've got causes which are not of me, that are causes that are not of the infinite, of infinite love in this case. So as long as you keep focused on infinite love, you're going to stay on that throne. And if you fall off that throne, it's not because God kicked you off, it's because you fell asleep. You fell asleep and you dreamed a dream that you were off your throne. But you cannot come off your throne because it's not God's will that you come off your throne. And you can't do anything unless God wills it. But you can fall asleep and have a fantasy. You can dream that you're doing that. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. He hath desired it for his habitation. So God lives in Zion, on Zion, that mountain. That's the part of you. That's it. God lives in you. That's where the ark is. The ark is on top of that mountain, in that tabernacle, right up there. That's who you are. That's the most exalted part of you. And the most exalted part of you is the truth of you. And anything that's not that is stuff that you've come up with on your own through the years, or stuff that you've decided to believe, or things that people taught you, or stuff that you taught yourself, either in this life or other lifetimes, or stuff that you've pulled in from the collective consciousness of our group ego, whatever it is. But the good news is it doesn't matter, because it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is the truth. And if you can focus on that truth, then any adversity that you've experienced in the past will be turned to good in front of your eyes. It's divine alchemy. So all of that lead, all of those base metals from your past are turned to gold in the moment, instantly. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly, okay, that's God talking. So God desires to live in you. That's all that God wants, is to live in you. Doesn't want to leave you. Never would leave you. All God cares about is you. You've got God's full attention. Because that's the thing about the infinite. The infinite can give you the infinite's full attention without forgetting what it's doing. Because it's infinite. It's infinite intelligence. Divine infinite intelligence can focus completely on you. And it's like the ultimate multitasker. So you don't have to worry about God not having time for you. You don't have to worry about God forgetting about you. God intently thinks of you because that's God's covenant with you. God's covenant is, I give you life, and it's eternal, and there's nothing else. Perfect love, perfect joy, perfect peace, perfect harmony, constant expansion. I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. Okay, so this is Zion. This is in your mind. That's who the her is. And that means that the poor means the poor in spirit. The poor in spirit. You want to be poor in relationship to God. Because if you're poor in relationship to God, then God pours into your cup till it's overflowing. There's nothing that you will want. But if you say, no, I got this. I don't need you. I don't need your help. I've got my own thoughts. I've got my own stuff. I don't need you. But thanks. That's not a very wise way of approaching God, because then God can't give you everything because you already have something. So if you want to be poor, you want to empty out your mind. You want to become like a beginner, like, I don't know what anything is. Just teach me. I am just a blank slate. I want you to be in charge completely. I don't want to come up with anything on my own. If you can have that attitude of being poor in spirit, then everything is given to you. So your job is to stay as empty as possible so that you can be receptive to the infinite good that is your birthright. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. So clothing with salvation inside your mind, all of those thought forms that serve love are clothed with joy. Joy is what you get. Salvation is what you get. That means the solving of this problem, these problems, whatever problems you have, no biggie. There's nothing that's hard for the infinite. It's all just the same. So all you have to do is empty your mind about what it's supposed to look like, or if you have the idea of like, oh, this is so hard, or whatever that is, empty your mind of all of it and just let the problems be solved, because the salvation is inherent in the process. So God's will is to save you. God's will is to heal you, is to solve any problem for you. That's God's will, but it's up to you to empty out your mind so that you can have that happen for you. Those thought forms in you that we talked about before, the priests and the saints, that brings you the salvation and joy. Joy. Joy is the proof that the salvation has come, because you feel joy. You feel joy. The more joy that you feel, the more that you know this is working. So you can even focus on joy. If you focus on nothing but joy, empty your mind of anything but that feeling and experience of joy, you know that you're doing God's work. You know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing the work of a saint. You're doing the work of a priest, because you are focusing your mind where it's supposed to be focused so that God can do the rest. You don't need to do God's work. You don't need to fill up your mind. You don't need to solve your problems. You don't need to do anything but focus your mind on joy and salvation. Just allowing yourself to be filled with these things. Be filled with these things. There I will make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. So David is the anointed in you. That is the king within you, right? That is that perfect love. Remember, your master here is love. And so that's David in you. That love is going to, it says that I will make the horn of David to bud. Now the horn in this case represents victory. Represents prosperity too, but it represents victory. It represents being victorious over whatever these problems are that you think come from your past. So God's going to make that horn to bud. And when that horn buds, that means that your salvation and that the solving of your problems, that your successes continue to grow and grow and grow. You can even think in terms of like that ace of wands in many of the tarot decks, where you see them budding forth. You see the little shoots coming out of that wand. That's what God's doing for you. It's allowing your horn to bud forth. I've ordained a lamp for mine anointed. That means that you'll see exactly where to go. You'll see where to go, what to do. There won't be any question. You will be guided and directed every step of the way. You are completely cared for. You are not on your own. You are not being tested. You are not being tried. You are not you're not some kind of plaything of the infinite, sending all kinds of tests and tribulations for you. That's nonsense. That's not what's happening. All that's happening is that you're giving your past to God and asking God to reinterpret it for you, so that instead of you having punishments from your past or negative experiences from the past, you're allowing God to turn those things around for you, so that divine alchemy can be experienced. And that divine alchemy is that you deserve all of the spiritual gold that is your birthright. And God gave you everything. And that's your birthright, every single thing that you could ever possibly need to make you happy, that you could ever possibly need to make you healthy and wealthy and wise. All of those things that you need. His enemies will I clothe in shame. A lot of times in the Psalms, when they talk about shame, they're talking about defeat. So defeat in battle is shame. But shame also reminds us that when God puts shame on your enemies, the enemies are thought forms, those old habits of thought that caused the problems in the first place. That shame is basically putting a scarlet letter on those thought forms so that you remember them. You remember them again so that you won't go back to them. You'll if you start going back to some old thought patterns, you say, oh, that's right. We don't do this anymore. Let's turn back to infinite love. but upon himself shall his crown flourish. Your crown? What does that make you if you've got a crown that's flourishing and it's God's will that your crown be flourished? That means you're royal. That means you're somebody. That means you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be prosperous. You deserve all of the accoutrements of your royalty. Everything that goes along with it. Every single thing that goes along with it. There's nothing that's too good for you from God's point of view. You deserve all good. All good. So any limitations that are placed upon that good are placed there by you and by your errant thought forms. And working a psalm like this will take care of this. So you just keep coming back to this psalm again and again and again until you get a sense of peace and certainty about whatever the situation was that you brought to the psalm. And that peace and certainty is a communication to you that the roots of the spell that you've just cast have taken, and that you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can move on, and it's going to grow into something wonderful. You can move on to something else. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. I really appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.